steering clear from any settlements and towns, doing their best to avoid confrontation. By the time they reached the environs of Constantinople, the Crusader fleet, more than 200 galleys and horse transports under the command of the formidable Doge of Venice himself, was well entrenched in the waters surrounding the greatest city of its time. The siege was on. Time was running out. They sheltered in the shadows while a patrol of footmen trudged past. Then they followed the keeper through a small cemetery to a thicket of trees where a horse-drawn wagon awaited them. Another graying man, one whose solemn expression couldn't mask a deep unease, waited alongside it, holding the reins. The second of three, Everard thought as he gave him a small nod while his men climbed into the back. They were soon advancing deep into the city, affording the burly knight an occasional glance through the narrow slit in the wagon's canvas cover. He had never seen such a place. Even in the near darkness, he could make out the hulking silhouettes of the soaring churches and monumental palaces that were of a scale he hadn't imagined possible. The sheer number of them was astounding. Rome, Paris, Venice. He'd had the good fortune to visit them all years earlier, while accompanying his Grand Master on a trip to the Paris Temple. They all paled by comparison. The new Rome was indeed the greatest city of them all, and when the wagon finally reached its destination, the sight that greeted him was no less awe-inspiring. A magnificent structure fronted by a soaring Corinthian colonnade, its pediment disappearing high overhead in the near darkness. The third keeper, the eldest among them, was waiting for them at the top of the edifice's grand stairs. "What is this place?" Everard asked him. "The Imperial Library," the man nodded. Everard's expression flagged his surprise. The Imperial Library? The keeper caught it, and his face lightened up with the merest hint of a grin. "Where best to hide something than in plain sight?" He turned and headed in. "Follow me. We don't have much time." The older men escorted the knights up the flight of steps, through the entrance vestibule, and deep into the cavernous building. The halls were deserted. The hour was late, but it was more than that. The tension in the city was palpable. The humid night air was heavy with fear, a fear that was stoked by the uncertainty and confusion that only got worse with every new day. They pressed on by torchlight, passing the vast scriptoriums that held most of the knowledge of the ancient world, shelves upon shelves of scrolls and codices that included texts salvaged from the long-lost library of Alexandria. They went down a spiral stairway at the very back of the building and through a labyrinth of narrow passages and more stairs, their shadows creeping along the speckled limestone walls until they reached an unlit corridor that was lined with a series of heavy doors. One of the hosts unlocked the door at the farthest end of the passage and led them inside. It was a large storeroom, one of many Everard imagined. It was cluttered with crates, its walls lined with cobwebbed shelves that housed scrolls and leather-bound codices. The air was musty and stale, but cool. Whoever built this place had known that humidity had to be kept at bay if the parchment and vellum manuscripts were going to survive, and they had, for centuries, which was why Everard and his men were there. "The news isn't good," the eldest of the keepers told them. "The usurper Alexius lacks the courage to take on the enemy. He rode out with 40 divisions yesterday, but didn't dare engage the Franks and the Venetians. He couldn't get back inside the gates fast enough." The old man paused, his eyes despondent. "I fear the worst. The city is as good as lost, and once it falls..." Everard could already imagine the vengeance that would be taken out on the city's nervous inhabitants if the Latins ever breached their defenses. It had only been 20 years or so since the Latins of Constantinople had been massacred. Men, women, children, no one had been spared. Thousands upon thousands of them, wiped out in a murderous frenzy the likes of which hadn't been seen since the taking of Jerusalem in the First Crusade. Venetian, Genoese, and Pisan merchants and their families who had